The rain had been falling for 3 hours when Vincent Shaw stepped out of his beat-up Honda Civic on the side of Highway 47. Steam poured from under the hood like a dying breath, and the engine made one final rattling sound before surrendering to silence. Vincent stood there in his worn work uniform, water dripping from his hair, staring at the car that had carried him faithfully for the past 8 years. It was 6:30 in the morning, and his shift at Hamilton Manufacturing started at 7 sharp. The factory was still 12 miles away. Vincent pulled out his cracked phone and called the only tow service he could afford. The automated voice told him the earliest they could come was Thursday. It was Monday. He looked at his reflection in the car's side mirror, a 34-year-old man with calloused hands and eyes that had seen too much struggle. His daughter Emma needed her seizure medication refilled by Wednesday. And missing even one day of work meant losing the overtime pay he desperately needed. Without hesitation, Vincent locked his car, pulled his thin jacket tighter around his shoulders, and started walking. The rain soaked through his clothes within minutes, but he pressed forward, one step at a time, along the highway shoulder. His work boots, already falling apart at the seams, squelched with every step. Behind him, cars rushed past, their headlights cutting through the gray morning like indifferent eyes. What Vincent didn't know was that one of those cars had slowed down. Inside a sleek black Mercedes, Helen Rodriguez, CEO of Hamilton Manufacturing, watched through her rain-streaked window as the figure in the work uniform trudged forward with unwavering determination. She had been driving to an early board meeting when she noticed him. Something about the way he walked, not with defeat, but with purpose, made her curious. "Follow that man," she told her driver, James. "Ma'am?" "Just do it. Keep your distance." For the next 2 hours, Helen watched Vincent Shaw walk. She watched him pause at a gas station to buy a cup of coffee with what appeared to be his last $3. She watched him share half of that coffee with a homeless veteran sitting outside. She watched him help an elderly woman whose grocery bag had torn, gathering her scattered items from the wet pavement without being asked. She watched him stop at a school crosswalk, even though school wouldn't start for hours, to pick up a child's dropped backpack from a puddle. Helen had built Hamilton Manufacturing from a small family business into a $150 million operation over the past 15 years. She prided herself on knowing her employees, but she realized she had never really seen them. Not like this. Not walking 12 miles in the rain because they had no other choice. By the time Vincent reached the factory gates at exactly 7 o'clock, his uniform was soaked through and his lips had turned pale from cold, but he walked through those gates with his head held high. Helen arrived 5 minutes later, her Mercedes pulling into the executive parking spot she had occupied for over a decade. Vincent Shaw had been working at Hamilton Manufacturing for 2 years. He operated the third shift assembly line, a job that paid $14.25 an hour, barely enough to cover rent, utilities, and his daughter Emma's medical expenses. Emma was 9 years old and had epilepsy. The seizures had started when she was 6, right around the time Vincent's wife Sarah lost her battle with cancer. Those had been the darkest months of Vincent's life. Watching Sarah fade away while simultaneously learning how to care for a child with a chronic condition had nearly broken him. But Sarah had made him promise something before she died. "Emma needs her daddy to be strong," she had whispered from her hospital bed. "Promise me you'll never give up on her." Vincent had promised, and he had kept that promise every single day for the past 3 years. After Sarah's death, Vincent had sold their house to pay for medical bills. He and Emma moved into a small apartment on the east side of town where the rent was affordable but the neighborhood was rough. Emma attended Jefferson Elementary, where the teachers knew she was different but didn't always know how to help. Vincent worked the night shift so he could be home when Emma got back from school, help her with homework, make her dinner, and tuck her in before leaving for work at 10 p.m. The cycle was exhausting, but it was their life. Emma never complained, even when other kids made fun of her secondhand clothes or when she had to explain why her daddy couldn't afford the school field trips. She was wise beyond her years, with her mother's gentle spirit and her father's determination. That Monday evening, Vincent walked home from work the same 12 miles he had walked that morning. His feet were blistered and bleeding inside his work boots, but he smiled when he saw Emma waiting for him at their apartment window, her face pressed against the glass. She ran to the door as he climbed the stairs. "Daddy, Mrs. Chen said you walked to work today because the car broke. Are you okay?" Vincent knelt down and hugged his daughter, breathing in the scent of the strawberry shampoo he bought for 50 cents at the dollar store. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Daddy's always fine when he comes home to you." "But your shoes are making red marks on the floor." Vincent looked down and saw the bloody footprints he was leaving on their worn linoleum. Emma was right. His feet had been bleeding more than he realized. "It's okay, Emma. Just a little tired from the walk." That night, after Emma fell asleep, Vincent sat at their small kitchen table trying to figure out how to make the numbers work. Emma's seizure medication cost $340 a month, even with his basic insurance. Rent was $850. Utilities, food, and Emma's other medical expenses took the rest. His car repair estimate was $1,200, money he simply didn't have. Vincent realized he would be walking to work for the foreseeable future. Tuesday morning came with clear skies but bitter cold. Vincent began his 12-mile walk at 5:30 a.m., this time wearing 2 pairs of socks and bandages around his worst blisters. He had found an old pair of hiking boots at Goodwill for $7 the night before. They were too big, but they were better than his work boots. Helen Rodriguez was waiting for him. She had arrived at the highway at 5 a.m., parked in a coffee shop parking lot with a clear view of where Vincent's Honda sat abandoned. She watched him emerge from the apartment complex across town. She had done her research the night before and begin his journey. This time, she followed him from the beginning. Helen watched Vincent stop at a 24-hour diner and spend 10 minutes talking to a waitress who was crying behind the building during her break. She watched him give the woman his business card with his phone number written on the back, telling her to call if she ever needed someone to talk to. She watched him pick up trash along the highway without being asked. She watched him help a stranded motorist change a flat tire, getting his hands covered in grease and making himself late, but never hesitating to help. When Vincent finally arrived at Hamilton Manufacturing, Helen was already in her office, but she was seeing her company through completely different eyes. She called her head of human resources, David Kim, into her office immediately. "I need you to pull the file on Vincent Shaw from the assembly line." David looked surprised. "Is there a problem with his work?" "Just pull the file." 20 minutes later, Helen was reading Vincent's employment record. Hired 2 years ago. Perfect attendance except for 3 days when his daughter was hospitalized for seizures. No complaints, no disciplinary actions. Supervisor notes indicated he was reliable, hardworking, and helped train new employees without being asked. His most recent performance review was excellent. Helen looked at his salary and felt something twist in her stomach. $14.25 an hour for a man who walked 24 miles a day rather than miss work. "David, what's the starting salary for an assembly line supervisor?" $22 an hour plus benefits package. "And for a quality control inspector?" $28.50 plus better benefits. Helen stared out her office window at the factory floor below, where she could see Vincent at his station, working with the same focused determination she had witnessed on the highway. Wednesday morning brought snow, not just flurries, but a steady snowfall that made the highway treacherous and visibility poor. Helen arrived at her observation point at 4:45 a.m., genuinely worried about whether Vincent would attempt the walk in such conditions. At 5:30, right on schedule, Vincent appeared. He was wearing what looked like every piece of clothing he owned, multiple shirts, a worn winter coat that was clearly too small, and a knit hat that Emma had made for him in art class. But he was walking, step by step, through snow that was already 3 inches deep. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far you'd walk for the people you love. This time, Helen couldn't just watch. She rolled down her window. "Excuse me," she called out. Vincent turned, surprised to see an expensive car stopped beside him. Helen was struck by his face up close, weathered but kind, exhausted but determined. "Are you walking to Hamilton Manufacturing?" "Yes, ma'am. Is there a problem?" It's really dangerous out here in this weather. Can I give you a ride?" Vincent hesitated. He had been taught never to get in cars with strangers, and he had taught Emma the same thing. But the snow was getting heavier, and he could already feel the cold seeping through his multiple layers. "That's very kind of you, but I'll be fine. Thank you, though." Please, my name is Helen Rodriguez. I work at Hamilton too. It would make me feel better knowing you got there safely. Something in her voice convinced him. Vincent got into the Mercedes, immediately apologizing for the snow he was tracking in. Don't worry about that. I'm Helen, by the way. Vincent Shaw. I really appreciate this, Mrs. Rodriguez. I hope I'm not making you late. Helen realized Vincent had no idea who she was. To him, she was just another Hamilton employee being kind to a coworker. The revelation was both humbling and eye-opening. What department do you work in, Vincent? Assembly line, third shift. Been there about 2 years now. You? Helen paused. Administrative stuff. Pretty boring compared to what you do. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the Mercedes' heater gradually warming Vincent's frozen hands. Helen noticed how he kept checking the time on his cracked phone. Your car broke down? Yeah, Monday morning. Transmission, I think. It's gonna be expensive to fix. That's rough. How far do you live from the plant? About 12 miles. It's not too bad, really. Good exercise. Helen looked at this man who was walking 24 miles a day in all weather conditions and calling it good exercise, and she felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. Do you have family, Vincent? Vincent's face lit up in a way that made Helen's breath catch. A daughter, Emma. She's 9. She's everything, you know? Smartest kid in her class, even though she's got some health challenges. She makes me want to be better every day. Health challenges? Epilepsy. Started a few years ago, right after her mom passed. But Emma's tough. Tougher than me, honestly. Helen felt tears prick at her eyes. She was worth over $50 million, lived in a mansion with more rooms than she used, drove cars that cost more than Vincent made in 2 years. When they arrived at Hamilton Manufacturing, Vincent thanked Helen profusely and insisted on getting her contact information so he could pay for the gas she had used. Vincent, you don't owe me anything. My mama raised me right, Mrs. Rodriguez. When someone helps you, you find a way to help them back. Helen watched Vincent walk through the employee entrance, and for the first time in 15 years of running Hamilton Manufacturing, she went straight to the factory floor instead of her executive office. She spent the entire day watching Vincent work. She watched him help a new employee who was struggling with the assembly process. She watched him share his lunch with a coworker who had forgotten his wallet. She watched him stay 20 minutes past his shift to help the maintenance crew fix a broken machine, even though he wasn't getting paid for the overtime. At the end of his shift, Helen was waiting in the parking lot. Mrs. Rodriguez, is everything okay? I was hoping I could give you a ride home. It's still snowing pretty hard. Vincent looked genuinely surprised. That's incredibly kind, but I can't ask you to go out of your way twice in one day. You're not asking, I'm offering. And honestly, I'd like to hear more about Emma, if you don't mind. The drive home took 40 minutes because of the snow, and Vincent talked about Emma the entire time. He told Helen about Emma's art projects, her favorite books, her dreams of becoming a teacher so she could help other kids who felt different. He told her about the seizures, how they came without warning and left Emma confused and exhausted. He told her about the school meetings where teachers suggested that Emma might be better served in a special program and how he had fought to keep her in regular classes. She's not less than any other kid, Vincent said fiercely. She just needs a little extra understanding. When they arrived at Vincent's apartment complex, Helen was shocked. The building was run down, with broken windows patched with cardboard and a front door that didn't close properly. But Vincent talked about it like it was a palace because it was home to him and Emma. This is us, Vincent said. Thank you again, Mrs. Rodriguez. You've been an angel today. Helen watched Vincent climb the stairs to a third-floor apartment, and she sat in her Mercedes for 10 minutes, staring at the building and thinking about her own empty mansion. Thursday morning, Vincent's alarm didn't go off. His cheap alarm clock had finally given up, and he woke up at 6:15, 45 minutes late. He had never been late to work in 2 years, and the thought of letting down his supervisor filled him with panic. Vincent ran 12 miles to work that morning. He arrived at 7:30, sweating despite the cold, his heart racing from exertion and anxiety. He went straight to his supervisor's office to explain and apologize. Shaw, you're 30 minutes late. Yes, sir. My alarm clock broke and I don't have a car right now. I ran as fast as I could. It won't happen again, I promise. His supervisor, Terry Williams, was a decent man who had always respected Vincent's work ethic. But company policy was company policy. Look, Vincent, I think you're a good worker, but we've had complaints from corporate about tardiness across all shifts. I have to write you up. Vincent's heart sank. A write-up meant he would be ineligible for overtime for the next month. Without that overtime pay, he wouldn't be able to afford Emma's medication. I understand, sir. It really won't happen again. What Vincent didn't know was that Helen Rodriguez had been looking for him since 7 a.m. When she couldn't find him at his usual station, she had asked Terry Williams about Vincent Shaw's whereabouts. Had to write him up for being late. Good worker, but rules are rules. Corporate's been cracking down on attendance issues. Helen felt something cold settle in her stomach. What does a write-up mean for him? No overtime eligibility for 30 days. It's standard policy. Helen realized that her own policies she had approved without thinking about their human impact, were about to destroy the life of the most dedicated employee she had ever encountered. That evening, Helen followed Vincent home again. But this time, instead of just dropping him off, she asked if she could meet Emma. Vincent was hesitant. Emma was everything to him, and he was protective of her. But something about Helen's genuine kindness over the past few days had earned his trust. She might be a little shy at first, Vincent warned as they climbed the stairs. She doesn't meet many new people. When Vincent opened the door, Emma was sitting at their small kitchen table, working on homework. She looked up with curious brown eyes that were so much like her father's. "Emma, sweetheart, I want you to meet Mrs. Rodriguez. She's been giving Daddy rides to work because our car is broken." Emma stood up politely and extended her small hand. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Rodriguez. Thank you for helping my daddy." Helen shook Emma's hand and felt her heart break a little. The apartment was tiny but spotlessly clean. Emma's artwork covered every available wall space, and her school books were stacked neatly on the kitchen table. Everything about the space spoke of love and care, even though money was clearly scarce. "What are you working on, Emma?" "A report about people we admire. I'm writing about my daddy." Emma's report was handwritten in careful cursive on notebook paper. The title read, "My Hero, My Daddy." Helen asked if she could read it, and Emma nodded eagerly. "My daddy is my hero because he never gives up, even when things are really hard. When Mommy died, Daddy could have been sad all the time, but instead, he makes me laugh every day. When I have seizures at school and other kids stare at me, Daddy tells me that being different makes me special, not weird. Daddy works all night so he can be home when I get back from school. He helps me with homework even when he's tired. He makes the best pancakes in the world, even though we can only afford the mix from the dollar store. Daddy walks everywhere now because our car broke, but he never complains. He says walking gives him time to think about how lucky he is to have me. I think I'm the lucky one to have him." Helen finished reading with tears streaming down her face. Emma was watching her with concern. "Are you okay, Mrs. Rodriguez?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Your report is beautiful. Your daddy is lucky to have you, too." Vincent made them all dinner, spaghetti with jarred sauce and frozen vegetables. It was simple, but it was prepared with love. Emma chattered throughout the meal about school, her friends, and her latest art project. Helen watched Vincent listen to every word as if Emma was sharing the secrets of the universe. After dinner, Emma had a seizure. It started without warning. One moment, she was laughing at something Vincent had said, and the next she was convulsing in her chair. Vincent moved with practiced efficiency, gently guiding Emma to the floor, placing a pillow under her head and timing the seizure on his phone. "It's okay, baby," Vincent whispered. "Daddy's here. You're safe." Helen watched, feeling helpless, as Vincent cared for his daughter with infinite tenderness. The seizure lasted 2 minutes, and afterward, Emma was confused and exhausted. "I'm sorry," Emma mumbled as Vincent carried her to bed. "You never have to apologize for something you can't control, sweetheart. You just rest now." When Vincent returned to the living room, Helen was still sitting on their small couch, shaken by what she had witnessed. "How often does that happen?" 2 or 3 times a week usually, more when she's stressed or tired. "And you handle it alone?" Vincent sat down heavily beside her. "It's not handling it alone when Emma's fighting it with me. She's braver than I could ever be." Helen looked around the small apartment again, at the medical information magnets on the refrigerator, the seizure log on the kitchen counter, the medication schedule taped to the bathroom door. This was the life of a man who walked 24 miles a day so his daughter could have her medication. Vincent, can I ask you something personal? Sure. If you could have anything in the world right now, what would it be? Vincent was quiet for a long moment. I'd want Emma to never feel different or left out. I'd want her to have all the opportunities other kids have. And I guess I'd want her to know that she's worth every step I walk, every hour I work, every sacrifice I make, because she is. Helen Rodriguez, CEO of Hamilton Manufacturing, sat in a tiny apartment eating dollar store spaghetti and realized she had learned more about leadership in one evening than in 15 years of business school and corporate seminars. Friday morning, Vincent's alarm clock situation had been resolved. Helen had quietly left a new one outside his door Thursday night. But Vincent had bigger problems. Emma had been having more frequent seizures, and Vincent had missed 2 hours of work Thursday afternoon to take her to the emergency room. Even though it was a legitimate emergency, missing work hours combined with his write-up meant Vincent was now on thin ice with company policy. Helen knew this because she had been monitoring Vincent's file obsessively. She also knew that if Vincent missed any more time in the next month, he could be terminated. The irony was crushing. The most dedicated employee she had ever seen was in danger of losing his job because of policies she had created. That morning, Helen made a decision that would change everything. Share if you've ever experienced something similar. When have you had to fight for what matters most to you? Instead of her usual executive parking spot, Helen parked in the employee lot. Instead of her tailored business suit, she wore casual clothes, and instead of going to her office, she went straight to the factory floor. "Terry," she called to Vincent's supervisor, "I need to talk to you about Vincent Shaw." "Mrs. Rodriguez, what are you doing down here?" Terry looked confused and a little nervous to see the CEO on the factory floor. "I've been watching Vincent's work performance, and I'm concerned about this write-up situation." "Ma'am, I know Vincent's a good worker, but company policy is clear about tardiness. Tell me about the circumstances of his tardiness." Terry explained about Vincent's broken alarm clock, his 12-mile walk to work, and how he had run the entire distance to minimize his lateness. "And what was Vincent doing when you wrote him up?" "He came straight to my office to explain and apologize. He took full responsibility." Helen nodded. "I'm removing the write-up from his file." "Ma'am, I don't think corporate policy allows." "Terry, I am corporate, and I'm changing the policy." Helen spent the next hour watching Vincent work. She saw him train a new employee with patience and kindness. She saw him volunteer to fix a machine during his break time. She saw him give up his lunch break to help a coworker who was falling behind on his quota. At the end of Vincent's shift, Helen was waiting for him in the parking lot. But this time, she wasn't alone. David Kim from Human Resources was with her, along with 2 other executives Vincent didn't recognize. Vincent approached nervously. "Mrs. Rodriguez, is there some kind of problem?" "Vincent, I need to tell you something, and I need you to sit down for it." Helen had rehearsed this moment, but looking at Vincent's worried face, she threw out her prepared speech. "Vincent, my name is Helen Rodriguez, and I'm the CEO of Hamilton Manufacturing." Vincent stared at her, processing this information. "The CEO?" "Yes. And for the past week, I've been watching you walk to work, and I've been learning what it really means to be dedicated to your job and your family." Vincent looked around at the group of executives, clearly confused and increasingly worried. "Am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong?" "Vincent, you're the best employee this company has ever had, and I had no idea you existed until I saw you walking in the rain on Monday morning." Helen told Vincent everything, how she had followed him, watched him help strangers, seen him care for Emma, witnessed his seizure, and learned about the man behind the employee number. "I've been thinking about this company all wrong," Helen continued. "I've been focused on profit margins and productivity reports, but I forgot about the people who make it all possible. You've shown me what real dedication looks like." Vincent was still confused. I don't understand what you're saying." David Kim stepped forward. "Vincent, we're promoting you to Quality Control Inspector, effective immediately. The position comes with a salary of $28.50 an hour, full health benefits, including comprehensive coverage for Emma's epilepsy treatments, and a company car." Vincent's legs gave out and he sat down hard on the parking lot pavement. "That's not all," Helen said gently. "Hamilton Manufacturing is starting a new employee assistance program for workers facing hardships. You're going to help me design it because you understand better than anyone what our employees might be going through." I can't," Vincent's voice broke. "There's one more thing," Helen said. "Emma's school called yesterday. Apparently, she's been accepted into the district's gifted program, but there were concerns about transportation and resources. Hamilton Manufacturing is sponsoring her enrollment, including transportation, supplies, and tutoring support." Vincent began to cry right there in the parking lot, surrounded by executives in their business suits. Helen knelt down beside him. "Vincent, you've been walking 24 miles a day to provide for Emma. It's time someone walked alongside you." The following Monday, Vincent Shaw drove to work in a reliable Honda provided by Hamilton Manufacturing. His first day as quality control inspector began with a comprehensive health benefits package that would cover Emma's medications completely. But more than that, he began his first day knowing that someone had seen his worth and his struggle. Emma's first day in the gifted program was the same Monday. Vincent was able to drive her to school in their reliable car, walk her to her new classroom, and meet her teachers without worrying about being late for work. "Daddy," Emma said as they stood outside her new classroom, "Mrs. Rodriguez seems really nice. I'm glad she's your friend." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." That evening, Helen Rodriguez did something she had never done in 15 years as CEO. She left work at 5 p.m. and drove to Vincent's apartment complex, not for business, but because Emma had invited her to see her art project about heroes. Emma's latest drawing showed a man walking through rain and snow with a little girl walking beside him. At the bottom, in Emma's careful handwriting, were the words, "Heroes don't wear capes, they wear work boots and love in their hearts." Helen looked at the drawing and realized that Emma was right. Vincent Shaw wasn't just walking to work every day, he was walking toward hope, toward love, toward a better future for his daughter. And somewhere along those 12 miles, he had taught a CEO what it really meant to lead. 6 months later, Hamilton Manufacturing's employee satisfaction scores reached an all-time high. The company had implemented flexible work policies, employee assistance programs, and recognition systems that acknowledge not just productivity, but character and dedication. Vincent Shaw became the company's employee advocate, helping design programs that supported workers facing challenges. Emma's seizures became less frequent as her stress decreased and her medical care improved. She flourished in the gifted program, and her artwork now filled the walls of Hamilton Manufacturing's break room. Helen Rodriguez learned that sometimes the most important business decisions aren't made in boardrooms, but on highways where broken-down cars teach CEOs about broken-down systems that need fixing. Would you have done the same in Helen's place? Let us know in the comments below. As Vincent tucked Emma into bed one night, she asked him, "Daddy, do you miss walking to work?" Vincent smiled and kissed her forehead. "You know what, Emma? I learned that it doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you're walking toward love." Emma drifted off to sleep. Slightly raspy, calm yet confident narrator, fast-paced but emotional storytelling lead us exactly where we need to be. He had walked those miles thinking he was just getting to work, but he had actually been walking toward a future where his dedication would be recognized, where Emma's needs would be met, and where kindness would be rewarded with kindness. Helen Rodriguez still drives by Vincent's old apartment complex sometimes, remembering the night she sat on a small couch eating dollar store spaghetti and learned that true wealth isn't measured in profit margins, but in the love we carry and the distances we're willing to travel for the people who matter most. Family isn't just blood, but who chooses to stay beside you for the journey, whether that journey is 12 miles long or lasts a lifetime. Never judge a person by their circumstances, because you never know what mountains they're climbing or what dreams they're carrying in their heart. And sometimes, the most powerful thing a leader can do is simply notice. Notice the person walking in the rain. Notice the love that drives them forward. And notice that true success is measured not by the distance traveled, but by the love that makes every step worthwhile. Subscribe for more powerful stories like this, and click on the video on the screen to watch the next one with a twist so powerful you'll never forget it.